Welcome back. It's terrific Tuesday, turn it up Tuesday, whatever kind of Tuesday you want. I'm thrilled to have my guest today. I just recently did his show. Here's a guy who totally took over social media, is putting out amazing content. He founded a talent company called NHP. He has the podcast. He does it live. He puts out great content. I had such a fun time with him. Mark had such a fun time with him. My pleasure to welcome Adam P. to tell me something good. Adam, it's your chance to tell me something good.
Steve, my man, thank you for putting a smile on my face and so many others having on the show today. I'm so happy to be here, man. I appreciate it. Happy to meet your audience.
You know, what's really cool is the dialogue we had just before. You said, hey, we're pros, just get at this. You were not a pro when you started at it. Neither was I. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Yeah. My journey real quick. So my day job, I am the founder of NHP Talent Group, and I'll softball a question for, if you want an emotional question, ask me later what this means. NHP Talent Group, we're a boutique staffing firm located here in New York, working with anyone in advertising, media, and marketing. We do things a little bit differently. We take a more of a consultancy approach than contingency recruiting. I've been doing that for about 5 years, 3 years as my own business owner, and I absolutely love it. It's a complete game changer. And when I'm not doing that, when I could find a minute, I am also the host of the Poscast, which is all about career journeys, life journeys, but ultimately, Steve, helping others harness their own inner tenacity to drive their life and career forward. Tenacity is a word that I hold dear to me. If I had knuckle tattoos or like one of those cool like lip tattoos, I would have it right here. And it's a word that's really driven me throughout my career, my life, and I want to help others find theirs.
So, I love the fact that you embrace social media. You certainly put out amazing content, and legitimately, I think you're a pro at it. The packaging, all the content is superior. But one of the things I love about people who find success is that somewhere along the road, they hit a divot that wasn't such a good ride. Yours is probably as good a story as there is to tell, and something good always comes from something bad. So you know where I'm going. So.
Yeah, I mean, I truly think, and I believe this wholeheartedly. I think in everyone's life and different extremes, you hit rock bottom, and everyone's rock bottom is a little bit different, and you climb your way back up. And that's why I use the word tenacity, because I needed to harness my tenacity and climb my way back up. But it wasn't until I got to the top out of that hole and I was able to look down, I knew, Steve, that I never wanted to get back down there. And that's been my drive ever since. So rewind a little bit. I'll tell a long story as short as possible. 15 years in advertising and marketing, worked at big brands, American Express, SiriusXM, bunch of different ad agencies. And in 2014, I landed over at VaynerMedia, working for the great Gary Vaynerchuk. I thought it was the holy grail. I thought it was, the best place in the world. But you know what, to be honest, Steve, I didn't click there. I didn't kind of get into the groove there. And I wasn't the same person, wasn't even nearly close to the same person I am now that I was back then. And I was not my best self. And I did not do what they hired me for. And ultimately, I lost my job. I got fired. And that was the lowest point. At that point, I was 35 at the time, just bought a really expensive house out here in Long Island, if you're familiar, in Merrick. Not cheap. And I was like, holy shit, like, how am I going to pay these bills? What am I going to do? But more importantly, I was like, what am I going to do with my life professionally? Do I really enjoy advertising and marketing? Is it what I want to do? And, on that day that I got let go, I spent some time with Gary, and he said the most important words of advice, Steve. He said, stop focusing on the things that you suck at and double down on your strengths. And that caused me, to reflect, to really look in the mirror and, in all honesty, have that moment of self-awareness and say, what am I good at? What do I suck at? And what do I want to be doing? And it wasn't advertising and marketing from a strategy standpoint. And all signs pointed me in the direction of recruiting. Gary thought it was a great idea that would really capitalize on all the stuff that I do well, that inner salesman that I have inside of me. And it brought it out, and I haven't looked back, dude. I have not looked back. That rearview mirror, I don't even adjust it, man.
So there's a couple of major takeaways there. Looking at yourself in the mirror and being totally genuine and authentic about what you're good at is much easier said than done. I mean, we've been peppered our whole lives with believing in something that is external, not internal. So I'm so grateful to have met you because you wear that so well.
Thank you. You know what? And I coach a lot of, I don't coach professionally. I mean, I do because I coach candidates, but I don't do it like as a coaching business. But whenever I talk to candidates and they're on the fence about what they want to do, I said, have an honest conversation with yourself first. Have a real honest conversation, like none of the sugarcoating BS, like real talk. What do I like about what I do? What I don't like about what I do? And use that knowledge to point you in the right direction. And again, it sounds so simple. But once you could be honest with yourself, everything else opens up for you in life.
Which is so great. And you're a living testament. One of the other takeaways I want to focus on, and this is where businesses, you're dealing with business owners that have people come and people go. And one of the major takeaways from Gary's content for me is it's more important what the employee thinks on the way out, almost more than on the way in. Everybody's, oh, we're welcoming you and there's a party and everything's great. And then for whatever reason, it's nobody's fault. Everybody's looking for blame. It just didn't work. And I think for you, it was a blessing in disguise.
Of course.
It put you on a road to true happiness, true genuine, you're engaged with your gift. And that's why you're so good at being in a podcast, because there's no bullshit. This is it. This is what you get.
There's no acting. There's no anything. And it's fascinating that you say that. And I assume you checked out the clip, of my interaction with Gary Vee in Dallas, and anybody who has not will link it after that. No? Yes?
Of course, yes, of course.
But it's so yeah.
I knew that from Gary, because I know Claude Silver,
of course,
who had stuff, and they have a philosophy about how to exit people, find them a strategy, find them a place to be.
Exactly, because it's a feeling and it's a reputation. I mean, this is 2020, right? The days of getting your pink slip and getting kicked out the door are over. So any company that does that now, and I mean, we could have a whole sidebar on how companies are handling layoffs and furloughs in the time of COVID. Some of them are doing it fantastic, Airbnb, and some of them are not doing it so well, where employees are getting blindsided on a 20-person Zoom call and getting an email 3 seconds later telling them they got laid off with all the information. What kind of reputation is that? What kind of employer branding is that? Right? Gary doesn't need me to defend him. He doesn't need me to defend Vayner, but how they treated me will always sit well with me.
So you, in researching you, which is, every good host of this stuff, I always like to do my homework a little bit. You mentioned a phrase in there that is actually candidly part of my master's degree in life. And you talk about radical candor. And radical candor is just a lifestyle. So I'd like you to comment on it, because you use the words. That is exactly what I have as one of the top keys to being great in life, is to be radically candid.
There's such an advantage to being able to effectively communicate radical candor, because radical candor not used in the right tone or context can be off-putting and offending. And I think that's the first thing to talk about. And I think anybody that could value giving it and receiving it equally just has an open mind, and they'll be able to take that and synthesize it and take action on it. Right? Would you rather somebody kind of like tiptoe around an issue and then it manifests and it gets worse and worse? Or would you rather somebody come to you and say, hey, Adam, I took a look at your website and you've got the podcast and you have the podcast live and you have all these things going on. And I'm like, thank you for that observation. I value you, Steve, as a very seasoned marketing branding pro. And I appreciate that advice, and I'm going to action on it immediately, because you care. And, we talked about this a lot with Claude too, and some other folks. If someone is taking the time to give you feedback, that means they care. They actually give a shit about you. If I didn't say anything to you, that means I don't want to even give you the time of day and waste my breath on you. So take that feedback as a gift, my friend.
That's so awesome. So I would be remiss if I did not ask about the initials of your company, because I think it tells a lot about you as a human being. So we know that you do the podcast. We know that you do this, recruiting business, but there's more to every business. It's all about the people. Tell us about the initials.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I had that decision to start my own business, which was literally a 30-second decision with my wife, where she basically saw that I was unhappy with my last employer. And she says, why do you need to work for them? Why do you need to work for anybody else? And I said, boom, that's it. And that's when I went and launched my own business and haven't looked back. But when it came time to name my company, I was throwing around all these like cliche terms like rocket talent, buzz recruiting, like all these stupid like recruiting names. And I said to her, I go, I'm having a real hard time naming this company. And she says, what's the most important thing in your life? What is your North Star? And at the time before my son was born, it was my daughter. And my daughter's initials are Nina Harrison Posner, and that's what I named NHP after. So every time I look at it, every time I wear this hat, every time I wear my sweatshirt, every time I sign an email, I am reminded of exactly why I do this. I have my North Star literally in front of me. Now, when my son gets a little bit older, he's 2 at the time, he's going to say, Daddy, what the hell is up with that? And I'm going to have to think of something. I'm going to have to name something after him too. So I'm waiting for that, Steve.
I love it. So one of the things I think that makes people great at what they do is their ability to tell stories about it. And on the drop of a dime, I could throw out any subject and you could tell stories. Talk to me about that skill set. Is it innate? Did you work on it? Did you get more confident doing it? I'm just curious what your journey was like, because your show, you have great guests on, as do I, people who have achieved unbelievable greatness.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not intimidated by that, so I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been a okay storyteller. I think I've gotten a lot better with practice, just like everything else when you put the reps in. And if I look at my first show, which was February of 2019 to where I am now, almost 100 episodes, countless live shows and everything, it's night and day how far I've come as an interviewer. And that is also, transcended off the podcast, when I'm in life, when I'm able to articulate stories with clients, it's effective communication and you put the reps in, and it's always been, I like telling stories when they have like a meaningful ending, right? Sometimes when you had a couple of drinks and you tell a story and your friend's like, it would be great about this story, Steve, if it had a point, right? So I really try to make sure that every story I'm saying has a point, as long as I haven't had a couple of drinks. But, it's good. And, at this stage of my life, almost, 41, 42, I am 41. I got a couple of stories under my belt, right? We're getting there. There's a couple of good ones.
I think, my observation is that I think one of the reasons why my coaching and my training is what it is that I can relate all of it to something that really happened.
Real life.
And that connectivity was like, wow, you really went through that. So that'll lead me to another question, which is own your L, which I is sort of linear, if you will, to what you were talking about. I write about it in my book. The defining moment for my career was my biggest loss. I think the same is of you, and that's really the entrepreneurial creed. So why don't you chew on that and tell us what you think?
Yeah, 100% too. And I think the overall concept is to take responsibility for your losses and take accountability, because you can't move forward until you do. And the hard part for me was, and I'll be honest with you, when I got let go, when I got fired from Vayner, it took me a while my wife knew immediately, but it took me a while to be able to say those words to my friends and my family, right? I said, oh no, I left, it wasn't right, but to actually say you got let go and take responsibility for it and own it, that's a game changer, because you get that monkey off your back. You get that stigma of being fired. And once I started to talk about it publicly, everyone was like, hey, I got let go. I got fired too. It was my fault. It wasn't my fault, but it started conversations and everyone could relate to that. And it shows vulnerability, right? And vulnerability does not mean you're weak. That is the opposite of it, right? Vulnerability is a strength, and it's how you use that. So owning your L is really about embracing mistakes, embracing failures, understanding that you learn, like synthesizing and taking action on what you learn from them. So own your L is pretty much my thesis, man. And you know what? I stole that straight from Gary, man. I don't think he would give a shit, because that's my story. And it really resonates throughout the podcast. It resonates with my clients and my candidates.
So I, when you talk about stealing, I tell people, listen, there are no new ideas. People have, heard me, and then they heard it from somebody else and they go, hey, that guy stole your stuff. I go, he just repackaged it, man. He took it, digested it. I'm not offended by that. I think if you go out and spread the gospel. So 2 more things I want to discuss. So as a entrepreneur, there's a new set of challenges than being an employee. And even though you got let go, what experience sharing could you give, and I use that word specifically because I think advice can be right or wrong. What experience sharing could you give us as an entrepreneur that started their business, got it out of the gates and then ran into this shitstorm that we're dealing with now.
Yeah, absolutely. So recruiting is a tough business. Any scenario, any market, any economy, recruiting is tough, right? It is cutthroat. It is, it's sales. It's street sales. There's winners and there's losers. It's very linear in recruiting. And now is especially even tougher, right? I mean, we have the most unemployment we've seen, in decades. There's not a lot of job opportunities and there's a lot of people on the market. So it's highly competitive. And the same thing with recruiting too. There's not a need for a lot of recruiters. So if you are a recruiter or if you're an independent business owner or if you're an entrepreneur and maybe business is slow right now, maybe you lost business, but you still have the relationships. The key word right now is be invaluable. Be invaluable. Turn the dynamic from being a vendor into a partner. And what that means is adding value to your clients. That means even if you're not making a penny off it right now, Steve, you are identifying their white spaces, helping them with strategy, doing what you just did on our call before, giving actionable, insightful advice. Because you know what? We're going to turn this thing around because we're Americans and we're New Yorkers and that's what we do. And we're going to turn this mofo around and we're going to get back to it one way or another. It's not going to be the same as we saw before. But when that client comes time to do business and they come calling, you want to be top of their list, man. And you start and finish with being invaluable.
I love that advice. That is, of all of the shows we've done, that one for me jumps right out at the top.
Thank you.
Because people do remember. They do remember.
And I don't just talk. I walk the talk, man. And the reason, and we'll get to tell me something good. I'm going to save it for telling you something good, but I put this into practice. And that's the reason. I'll tell you something good in a minute.
All right, good. One more thing, and then you can tell me something good. This has been fantastic. So you were the first host to actually have my son on before me.
Yeah.
So I want to unravel that
Mark's
story.
Awesome, man.
Super proud of him. I just want to know how you guys met, how the genesis was, and because of him, I met you. I jumped in it. So
Yeah, no, I love it because I followed you for a long time, right? I mean, you've been on my radar for a while, and I have a list of guests that I want to have on my show, and you're on that list. I just didn't get to it yet, in all honesty, right? Like, right. I'm backlogged a bunch, but you're on that list, and it's funny. So I connected with your son Mark, and it was probably about a month and a half ago. We had a fantastic first conversation. I'm like, I love your story, dude. Right, his journey from football, into now, working side by side with Pops. And I was like, I got to have you on my show. He said, I got to have you on my show. And we just kind of connected like that. And the thing that attracted me to your son is his tenacity, right? It's that drive. And you cannot, right? You can't fake it. You can't fake tenacity. You cannot fake authenticity, and you can't fake, tenacity. These are two things that are innate. Now, everybody has it in them, but at different levels, right? So folks like us need to help other people make that rise to the top. So Steve has it. Mark has it from that coaching background. He knows how to pull out the best in people. And I connected with him and I knew I had him on the show. And that leads us to where we are now, my man.
Which is incredible. And I'm obviously a proud dad. And one of the biggest paradigm shifts for me taking my business into the coaching world was to say, wow, I'm going to take total strangers and make them better. And in some cases, in a lot of cases, better than me. So here's a case study with my son. I want him to be better than me. That's a complete mind blower for someone who is as competitive and has climbed the ladder the years I've done it. So it's.
But what's fascinating about that statement, Steve? When people ask me about the word legacy, and I ask it a lot on my show too. I think I might have asked you about legacy. When my answer for what legacy is to leave this world a better planet than I found it, and for me, that's ensuring that my kids are better than me. So you and I are deeply aligned on that one. I want my kids to be incredibly more successful, smarter, better, well off. I want all of that shit, right? And that's what legacy means to me. And I think that's why you and I are attracted, because our values are aligned.
Very much so. So bring us home. Tell me something good, AP.
I'm gonna tell you something very good. So we go back to the word invaluable, right? And for me, everything is based on relationships. And my current client right now, I stuck with them. I stuck with them through, at a point where I thought I was going to lose the business, but I kept adding value. I kept working harder than my current like terms and contract with them. I went above and beyond. I added and added to it. And last Friday, they doubled our scope of work. They are hiring double the positions. I was able to onboard more staff, and it's just incredible. And that comes down to, going back to like put in the work and sticking with it. So that is something good. The other thing that's good is I just made a hire yesterday. People are hiring, and I want everyone who's out on the job market right now to have confidence, to be smart, and remember, be relevant and be strategic in your job search. There's a lot of people out there who are throwing advice at you. They're giving you job tactics, job tips, but it comes down to tenacity, sticking with it. The job search is going to be the hardest job you've ever had, especially if you don't have a job right now. Treat it more serious than any job you've ever had. Be relevant. Apply to relevant jobs that you are more than qualified for. Because us as recruiters right now, we don't have time to sift through folks that are maybe 50% qualified for a role. I want someone that's 95, 100% qualified for a role. But listen, man, like good.
And committed to that role.
Right. And like, just be good, like, just be optimistic. Like, I've had more time with my family. My wife, who is an attorney who's never home, for the last 3 months, we've been able to have family dinners every night. Her and I are working side by side. This is real life connecting with the people that are closest to you. It's going to end soon. Just remember these good times.
I am thrilled that you and I are connected, that
100%.
we're friends. You are bringing good stuff to the universe. And you know what? I'm a firm believer that the good guys win. That is certainly something good. Thank you for sharing your time, your energy, your thoughts, and anything you want and need from the Noodlebergs. You want some of my guests, you want some of my clients, you just ask for the introduction and you got it.
I appreciate it. And likewise on this end. And I will be my parents are in Boynton, so I will be down there and we will break bread properly, my man.
I cannot wait, man. You take care. Thank you for everything. Stay on the ball.
Thank you for having me, Steve.